So let's begin part 2 of this introductory lesson and open our minds to some new ideas and theories. The theory of the interim space. Please take a moment to understand this theory of the interim space. It will provide the basis of thought for the next step, which will let you begin to understand the mastermind concept on which the entire course is based. As we all know, everything on Earth is composed of atoms. These microscopic building blocks of life are composed of tiny electrons, protons, and neutrons. Everything, whether it is a huge floating star or a small grain of sand, is made from these atoms. Individual atoms are unchangeable. A hydrogen atom is just that, a hydrogen atom. But when different atoms come together in certain amounts, they can create molecules that are both physically and chemically different from one another. For example, while one hydrogen atom is unchangeable, if you mix it with another hydrogen atom and one oxygen atom, you will get H2O, or water. H1 plus H2 plus O1 equals H2O. Neither hydrogen atom is changed when added to the oxygen atom, but together they form a new compound of water. A difference in the amount of electrons, protons, and neutrons of atoms makes items chemically different from one another, and the differences in the number and arrangement of these atoms make items physically different from one another. Many different substances can be created out of the same type of atoms. The difference between these substances has to do with the arrangement and amount of these atoms. We also know that these atoms are not still, but are constantly in motion. Atoms create substances by having their electrons constantly rotating around one another in space. This movement of electrons is everlasting. Author's note: please remember that while this knowledge is well known to us today, scientists hundreds of years ago had no way of explaining what water was made of. Today, our knowledge of the physical world is great, but there are still many aspects of the physical world that we don't understand. Keep an open mind about what scientific things we yet do not understand. So what do all these scientific facts have to do with obtaining knowledge? Remember that all atoms are constantly in motion. The space in which these atoms are in motion is not empty. Movements of atoms occur in various mediums, such as air here on Earth, or in another invisible medium, such as what you would see in space. This invisible space filled with such tiny atom movements is what we will refer to as the interim space in this course. Here is an example to help you fully grasp the concept of the interim space. Sound energy occurs in the form of vibrations. Air is a conductor of these sound vibrations, but air is not a conductor of light and UV vibrations. The interim space is the empty void between all atoms in existence that conducts all vibrations, including light, UV, sound vibrations, and any other type of vibration that we may not yet be aware of. Sound is created by vibrations traveling through the interim space. You cannot see or feel sound. You can only hear it using the specially designed bones and muscles within your ears. The human ear can detect only the sound which is produced from 32,000 to 38,000 vibrations per second. As the rate of vibrations per second increases above that which we call sound, they begin to manifest themselves in the form of heat. Heat begins with about 1,500,000 vibrations per second. Still higher up the scale, vibrations begin to register in the form of light. 3 million vibrations per second create violet light. Above this number, vibration sheds ultraviolet rays, which are invisible to the naked eye, and other invisible radiation. Vibrations of energy, no matter what source they come from, are universal in nature. This means that the only difference between sound and light vibrations is the number of the rate of vibrations per second. It is also scientifically true that neurons within our brains release electric signals. Isn't it possible, then, that the electric signal vibrations that are created by the human brain would also travel through this interim space? Let's look at a theory posed by the famous inventor and scientist Alexander Graham Bell. Remember that when Bell invented the telephone, the idea of transmitting electric signals through the air in the form of a wireless wave was a new and unproven idea. Even though we understand how electronic signals can be sent wirelessly through the air, such as sending a signal from one cell phone to another, there are still many aspects of the interim space that we do not understand fully today. Bell's ideas from several decades ago showed amazing imagination, another important fact to remember as you read on. Graham stated in an experiment, suppose you have the power to make an iron rod vibrate with any desired frequency in a dark room. At first, when vibrating slowly, its movement will be indicated by only one sense, that of touch. As soon as the vibrations increase, a low sound will emanate from it, and it will appeal to two senses. At about 32,000 vibrations per second, the sound will be loud and shrill. But at 40,000 vibrations, it will be silent, and the movements of the rod will not be perceived by touch. Its movements will be perceived by no ordinary human sense. From this point up to about 1,500,000 vibrations per second, we have no sense that can appreciate any effect of the vibrations. After that stage is reached, movement is indicated first by the sense of temperature, and then when the rod becomes red hot by the sense of sight. At 3 million, it sheds violet light. Above that, it sheds ultraviolet rays and other invisible radiations, some of which can be perceived by instruments employed by us. Now, it has occurred to me that there must be a great deal to be learned about the effect of those vibrations and the great gap where the ordinary human senses are unable to hear, see, or feel the movement. The power to send wireless messages by interim space vibrations lies in that gap. But the gap is so great that it seems there must be much more. You must make machines practically to supply new senses, as the wireless instruments do. Can it be said when you think of that great gap that there are not many forms of vibrations that may give us results as wonderful as, or even more wonderful than, the wireless waves? It seems to me that in this gap lie the variations which we have assumed to be given off by our brains and nerve cells when we think. But then again, they may be higher up in the scale, beyond the vibrations that produce the ultraviolet rays. Do we need a wire to carry these vibrations? Will they not pass through the interim space without a wire, just as the wireless waves do? How will they be perceived by the recipient? Will he hear a series of signals, or will he find that another person's thoughts have entered into his brain? Bell's theory matches the idea of those of Napoleon Hill. We know that the electrons of atoms are constantly moving around in an area we call the interim space. It may be possible that other types of vibrations will also move through this medium. We cannot see or determine the energy that occurs at 3 million vibrations per second in the form of UV light, but that does not mean they do not exist. We have new machines and other equipment that go beyond our senses to tell us about the existence of such energy. So it also may be true that we do not yet understand other types of energy, such as those vibrations created by the human brain that may be able to move through the interim space. Again, we understand that the human brain sends electric signals along nerves. These nerves interpret the signals from the brain and tell our bodies what to do, like lift a finger or blink an eye. If you pass an electric current through the nerves of a dead person, the nerve can still cause the person's muscle to react, such as twitching. So nerves pass electric signals to one another in much the same way a transmitter sends electric signals to a radio. These electronic signals pass through the interim space and can be interpreted by other radios with the technology that allows them to. Could it be true that the human brain can also send electronic signals through the interim space? Signals that could be interpreted by another brain that is equipped to decipher these signals. Remember that just as we once didn't understand how radio waves traveled through the air, it may be just a matter of creating new technology that will help us also understand how human brain signals travel. Imagination and an open mind are necessary to see such things in life. So before you cast off this lesson and sigh the word telepathy, think about what Napoleon Hill was getting at. The full understanding of how electronic signals released by the human brain travel has not yet been fully scientifically defined. Perhaps in the future, newer technology will appear that will turn these ideas into facts. But for now, we have to think that the possibility for electronic signals originated from the human mind may be able to travel through the interim space. This may be the cause of random ideas that pop into your head without apparent cause, or the ability for a speaker to feel a shift in his audience, or why some people have an immediate mental dislike or mutual attraction to another person, or why certain people, such as twins, seem to be able to communicate with one another over long distances. This theory represents one of those scientific ideas that we just cannot prove yet. Just as it took several hundred years for humans to understand how the Earth rotates around the sun, or how gravity works, or how we can send invisible radio waves through the air, it may take some time and the development of new technology for us to understand how brain waves travel. Hill is not claiming scientific facts here, but if you take a moment to conceive that his theory may have some scientific basis and apply it as though it were true to Hill's teachings, you may just be surprised at how much you can use it in your life.